Tonight's story is called The Last Note on the Bus. All names and identifying details have been changed, but the records I mention are the kind you can really find, public, dry, and sometimes the only things that remember us when people don't. Settle in, keep the aisle clear, and if you brought a pen, please, don't leave anything behind. I want you to meet a bus driver I'll call Marlene. Night shift janitors and small-town bus drivers know more about us than anyone, and they never ask to. They just learn it, one morning at a time. Marlene drove Route 7B, a long sawtooth of gravel and washboard asphalt through soy fields, windbreaks, and the kind of houses you only ever see from the road. She had a ritual. When she parked in the garage, she'd walk the aisle and pick up what the day left behind. Hoodies, wrappers, a mitten in September, a calculus worksheet curled like a leaf, and notes, always notes. Some were folded triangles. Do you like me? Yes/no/maybe. Past one row too far. Others were scrawled on the back of a Pop-Tart box. Sometimes they were pictures in urgent crayon. A dog with too many teeth, a car with wheels too small. Things kids see that don't fit. Marlene kept them in a shoebox in her hall closet. She said it proved she had a life where she was needed. She said it like a joke, but she never threw the box away. Most of it was nonsense. Then one morning, late March, she found something wedged under the last seat. Back right, the one that rattles if you don't stomp it down. Ruled paper, torn from a composition book, the top edge like teeth. Pencil so light she had to tilt it to read. The note said, "The house with the blue porch didn't just burn. It peeled. It screamed." It went on, the same careful print. There were 3 steps, one cracked, the right-hand rail cold even in July. There's still a horseshoe nailed to the beam over the door. The man said it would bring luck. He lied. The school stopped here once. Marlene put the note down. She'd driven 7B for 7 years. She knew every mailbox. She knew which dogs lunged and which just talked, but she didn't know a blue porch house. That afternoon she asked the older kids, the ones finishing high school, because getting a car costs more than getting out. "You ever see a blue porch place? Maybe off County Road D?" They shook their heads. They stared out the window the way kids do when they're not looking at anything, but they are searching. That night, Marlene texted me a photo of the note. She asked, "Is this a joke?" I told her jokes don't usually know the temperature of a railing. She'd started listening to my show on night shifts, stories that kept her alert without spiking her heart. I liked the way she didn't embellish anything. She'd say, "This happened," and let the air decide how to hold it. So I drove out there, early April, a Monday under a shell gray sky. Marlene led me onto the quiet bus, engine off, the interior smelling like vinyl and wet denim. She showed me the seat, the note, and the shoebox. We went through the box like detectives at a yard sale. A missing calculator, a boy who's mean because he likes you, a deer with a crown. Then, 2 weeks after the blue porch note, another tucked into the rubber seal behind the driver's mirror. "The house is not on your route anymore." Printed larger like someone wanted her to read it without touching it. At the bottom, lighter. "Ask the board why they changed the stop." The school board keeps minutes. Most of them are online now, PDFs with earnest headers and grainy signatures. They don't think anyone reads them except to complain about masks or football. But those minutes remember every miles per gallon report and every time a parent trembles while they ask why the bus didn't come. The second note gave me something to hold. They changed the stop. Why change a stop on a rural route? Safety enrollment, washed out road, or because there won't be anyone to pick up there anymore. I searched a decade's worth of minutes. It's not glamorous. The same names recur. The board chair who always says, "for transparency." The treasurer who says, "from a fiscal perspective." You see when they get a new font. You see when someone retires and their replacement spells the same street wrong. Then there it was, June 14th, 2011. Agenda Item 7C. Transportation Route Adjustments. Subpoint 3. Remove stop at Hale Road/McCutcheon Bend due to residents lost by fire. Reassign neighboring stops as necessary. That's how a world ends in official language. Residents lost by fire. The motion carries. The meeting adjourns. Afterward, they eat cookies in the corridor. I said the street name out loud. Hale Road. Marlene said softly, "I don't go that far anymore." We drove it anyway. A route is a kind of memory. You sit high and the world lays itself down in the same order every time. We turned at McCutcheon, past the bend, the ditch with cattails, a line of cottonwoods with white leaves twisting like fish scales. And then space. Not a house. An absence shaped like a house. The porch must have been there. 2 concrete footings showed like teeth in gum. A black rectangle where something had burned into the dirt and then filled with leaves and rain and years. Nailed high on a beam that somehow didn't fall. The orange bloom of rust on a horseshoe. Marlene didn't get out. Hands on the wheel, eyes on the nothing ahead. I stood in the wind. I touched the beam. The horseshoe was cold. Back at the garage, we opened the shoebox again, and I noticed what I should have seen. The pencil pressure, the careful spacing that felt older. The writer tried to look like a kid, but they weren't. Children don't underline board. Children don't use semicolons. Whoever wrote this was an adult or a kid taught to write like one. That night, a third note. Not on the bus. Marlene's mailbox. No stamp. No return address. The same hand. "You found it. Keep going. They changed their name." A mailbox note in quiet penmanship is scarier than any midnight scream. There are property records, tax rolls, transfers. If you line them up and squint, and if someone has already aimed you at the right house, you can sometimes see a life in them. I pulled the parcel number for the burned lot from the county assessor. Total loss, non-habitable. A scan of an old report stapled to the file. Notes. Cause undetermined. Suspected arson. No injuries reported. 2 children relocated to maternal aunt. Arson. 2 kids. Aunt. They changed their name. Why do you change your name? Sometimes for joy. Sometimes to cut loose a story someone else wrote for you. And sometimes to survive the exact person who writes notes nudging strangers to keep looking. I cross-checked board minutes with old route maps. Route maps are humble treasure maps, dots for stops, scribbled legends. I asked for the 2010 version, a tiny dot at Hale/McCutcheon labeled K. With a last name I'll change to Keel. Next to it, X2, meaning 2 students, grades 3 and 6. I pulled the 2012 map. The dot is gone. In pencil, moved to District C. I checked District C's minutes. September 2012. Accept transfers of 2 students into our lunch program. Family name changed to Whitlow. Paperwork on file. Whitlow. Keel to Whitlow. The letters are cousins. Easy to teach children to sign in a new way. Easy to forget how to sign in the old. I told myself I was doing it for Marlene, for the notes, for the truth. But truth makes you feel capable of things you shouldn't be capable of. The 4th note wasn't for Marlene. It was for me. Slid under the radio station door between shows on a day the wind could have been blamed for anything moving. "You're good at this. Keep going." Either someone was encouraging us to solve a puzzle they'd laid, or someone was telling us we were walking where they had already walked. When you change your name to survive someone, you usually change counties too. You go where you don't have a cousin of a cousin who knows your face. District C is 37 miles from the burned lot. Different township, different courthouse, different stamp for the same years. I found the aunt in property rolls 2 towns over. Her last name, call it Dunley, attached to a deed transfer, July 2011. Aunt assumes care, children listed as residents. 2 years later, the aunt sells that house back to the bank. A forwarding address appears, a P.O. box in a small apartment. The kids' records, the part that isn't public, aren't mine, but the minutes tell a story no one meant to write. October 2011. Approved tuition forgiveness for 2 students relocated due to house fire. November 2011. Approve modified bus route while family transition persists. April 2012. Reassign, close stop, family departed. We drove to District C. Same fields, different feel, mailboxes hunched differently. At the bus garage, I asked if anyone had trouble with notes. The dispatcher looked over a donut. Notes? Honey, we sweep up the notes with the grit. I checked the library. If you think libraries are just for books, count how many people just need a computer in a place with other people around. The librarian pulled microfilm, a smudged title, a clear date. A blurry photo of a house. The porch is blue even in black and white. Caption: Fire at rural home under investigation. Copy: Neighbors report loud argument earlier in the evening. No arrests. A quote: That family kept to themselves. The little girl waited at the stop with her brother. 2 weeks later, a smaller item. Man questioned in connection with Hale Road fire released. No charges. Last name, I'll change it. Bandon, not the family's name. The mother's boyfriend. It's almost always the person everyone knew you should never have let in after the first night, after the first apology. We had enough to tell a story, but the notes wanted us to find someone. Marlene took the box to the sheriff. He squinted. Looks like a kid, she said. It isn't, he said. They aren't threatening you, she said. Not yet, he said. We'll keep an eye out. And you know what an eye looks like when it's out. So we kept reading. The 5th note was taped to the fuel cap on Marlene's bus. The tape was careful not to mar the paint. Don't you want to know what name they use now? As if wanting were the engine and not the brakes. There's a place where people change names quickly. Family court, adoptions, custody, protection orders. You can't see the names when it involves kids. That's the point. But sometimes the board minutes catch a breath, granting a bus pass under a new name with the old student ID. Sometimes yearbooks remember a smile that doesn't show up again. Sometimes a hand-drawn route map says, formerly Kiel, because a driver wanted to help the next driver. I pieced it together. In 2013, the aunt's last name, Dunley, shows up in a board agenda as a volunteer chaperone. These rural boards publish everything. They want you to see how few people do how much. Next to Dunley is Whitlow, a teenager marked junior helper. 2 years later, Whitlow is on the honor roll with a different first name than the child once on Hale Road. Same month, the high school wins a debate tournament. The coach thanks our captain, E. Whitlow. E for Ellie, maybe, or Evan. The burned house had a 6th grader and a 3rd grader in 2011. The years fit. I found the aunt's obituary in 2019. Short, survived by niece K and nephew E. Different last name, Caldwell. A deed transfer follows to a rental on Maple Terrace in the name Caldwell. A sagging balcony, a satellite dish tilted like a prayer. I stopped, not because I couldn't go farther, because I could. The 6th note was left at the beam with the horseshoe. Yellow legal paper, folded once, elastic band, pencil pressed hard enough to bruise the paper. They told the kids their names are Whitlow because their mother loved a song about a little white bird and because the W's are easier to carve into a school desk without being seen. But they aren't Whitlow. They never were. The man knows this. He is patient. Patient was underlined 3 times. Marlene stood by the bus, arms crossed like she was holding herself in. He's still out there, she said. If he is, I said. He's listening, she said. Then say what you need to say. If you are listening, you are not alone. I didn't say it for him. I said it for anyone whose porch isn't there anymore. The 7th note broke the rhythm. What if I told you I was on your bus once? You can't unknow that. Every sleepy head in the rearview mirror blurs into possible years. Every laugh falls into a pocket where you keep something like grief and something like hope. Marlene said, "I'm done." For a week she swept and she tossed and she pretended the only things that stayed were the ones kids meant to leave. Then she found the 8th note beneath the emergency window release. She called me from the parking lot, bus door still open. "It's almost summer. By fall, they will have moved again. Ask the maps how the route bends for them. Ask the board who gets a bus pass when an apartment lease is month to month." Not a taunt. Instructions. A trail the writer wanted us to follow. It made me angry. Who were we to hunt people who had made themselves unfindable for a reason? Who was the note writer to dress our curiosity like concern? I didn't sleep. The edge between investigation and intrusion is thin as paper. It will cut you the same way. There's a part of this story I haven't told you. When I was 15, my mother changed my name. Not legally, just at the door. She taped over the mailbox and wrote a new last name in block letters with a Sharpie that bled when it rained. She told the neighbors we were moving to be closer to family. We left on a Tuesday. The new name rubbed. When someone called it, I looked down, like they were talking to a person behind me. It took years before it felt like a shirt I picked. So when the 9th note arrived, addressed to me at the station, with nothing inside but a photocopy of transportation route adjustments, I understood what I'd been refusing to understand. The person writing wasn't just looking for them, they were training us to look too, to see how easy it is, to feel how powerful, to prove that anyone who wants you badly enough can find you, if they're willing to turn over the bureaucratic soil and sift it with bare hands. I wish I could tell you the sheriff took the box and solved it, that we pulled a thread and a bad man fell out whole. That isn't what happened. We waited. We told the dispatcher to notice anyone who didn't belong on the lot. Marlene changed her route in a small way she was allowed. 5 minutes earlier here, 1 stop reversed. Because sometimes the smallest change proves to someone watching that you don't move like a machine. On a Friday in May, the 10th note appeared. Not for me, not for Marlene, for a child. A 4th grader, call her Tansy, dropped her binder in the aisle. When she picked it up, a folded paper slid out she didn't recognize. She handed it to Marlene. "I don't want trouble," she said. Her ears were red. She wasn't the kind of kid who finds notes. Marlene pulled over where she could. She unfolded it. She read it once, then again. She didn't show it to the kids. She drove to the garage and called me. "I think this is the last one." Same paper, same pencil, different tone. "I am still looking for them. You're so close, but you keep stopping at ethics, at kindness, at propriety. I admire that. I don't have that problem. I sit in parking lots and watch who people are after they're done being people in public. I can wait a decade. I can wait 2. I can watch every bus on every route until I see 2 faces that should have been mine to ruin. I said the thing people say when the thing is too big to look at. We should call someone." Marlene said, "We are someone." We called the sheriff. To his credit, he didn't squint this time. He took the box. He dusted for prints he'd never match. There are a million hands that hold school buses, and too few of them got scanned. A cruiser parked 2 blocks from the garage after midnight for a few weeks, then stopped. Resources go where they scream loudest. If you're waiting for a clean ending, the handcuffs, the light that makes everyone look guilty, that doesn't live here. What I can give you is what happened 3 days later in the quiet of a morning that hadn't decided what kind of day it was. Marlene was loading kids by the old hardware store. A man stepped to the curb with a little boy. He wore a hat that shadows your eyes without making a statement. He looked at the bus like people do when they've never really looked at a bus, only at what buses bring or take. He didn't get on. He didn't send the kid on. He just watched. long enough for Marlene to catalog him the way drivers do with deer and potholes. Late 30s to early 50s, slender, a way of standing that suggests running in his past and waiting in his future. Marlene didn't look at him. She looked past him the way you do with an animal you don't want to spook. She shut the doors, pulled away, checked her mirrors. The man turned and walked the other way. She never saw him again. That isn't an ending, it's a limit. A line even bold people won't cross, because if you do, you might never find your way back. We finished the school year. The kids got popsicles with the last PTA money. They ran in arcs you can't trace on a map. E. Whitlow, debate captain from the honor roll, was in the graduation program. He shook hands with the principal and didn't look at the crowd much. His little sister had a different last name on her program now, Caldwell, like the obituary said. We take names off hooks as we grow. Sometimes they never smell like us again. If this were only a story about a stalker, I'd end it here. Warn you to be careful what you post. Remind you paper remembers differently than pixels. But it isn't only that. A week after graduation, my station manager handed me an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper torn from a composition book. The handwriting was fast, like a person talking faster, because if they don't, they'll never say it. We are okay now. Tell her thank you. She remembered us when the map forgot. We left notes because we wanted someone to know we didn't burn. We wanted someone to know he was still looking. Not so you'd find us, but so you'd stop him from wanting to. If you read this, don't say our names. We like the ones we have now. No signature. It didn't need one. I had been telling one story and living another, and for the first time, I realized the notes weren't all from one hand. Marlene cried. Good then, good. I didn't cry until later, in the car, at a red light that lasted forever. I never found out if the person still looking was that boyfriend, Bandon, or someone else who thinks people are possessions and names are labels you peel off. I never found out if the man at the curb wasn't just a man at a curb. I did learn something I wish I hadn't needed to learn. In quiet towns and loud cities and everywhere between, the paper trail we call boring is a river. People dip their hands in it for all sorts of reasons, some good, some not. The way to keep each other safe isn't to burn the paper, it's to watch the people by the banks. I asked Marlene what she'd do with the shoebox. She said, keep it, and add something she wrote on the inside cover. We don't keep secrets, we keep stories. She tucked the last note into a plastic sleeve like a passport. The garage is quiet in summer. Motors cool. Aisles stay empty. But on the first day of school, Marlene will walk the aisle again and collect what the day left behind. She'll pick up a wrapper, a mitten, a triangular confession, and she'll look at each one with the kind of attention that turns a life into a map someone can follow home. If you leave a note on a bus, make it kind. Make it true. Make it one that tells someone they are seen without making them smaller. And if you can help it, don't write in pencil. Pencil fades. Chalk blows away. Ink remembers. Epilogue. A few months later, a postcard came to the station, water-warped like it had lived near steaming dishes. The front was a cheap photo of an empty highway. The back said, "We moved again." This time it wasn't because of fear. It was because of work. Route maps can mean that too. Tell the bus driver the porch is green now. I took the postcard to Marlene. She smiled without her teeth, the way something lands right. She said, "Green is easier to paint over." I said, "Maybe no one will have to." Sometimes the last note on the bus isn't the last note. Sometimes the last note is the one you never have to write. This has been The Last Note on the Bus. If you're listening on a bus right now, lift your eyes for a second. There are other lives around you. Leave them better than you found them.